This week on the video version of the Business of Tech, the DOJ's big reversal that technologists should embrace, some advice from investors for business owners, MSP's expectations and worries surveyed, secret shopping secrets for B2B, an update from the Ransomware Task Force, and Apple's implementation of self-service repair is quite something. All this and more, hit those like and subscribe buttons as it helps us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. A significant reversal by the U.S. Department of Justice on how it views good faith security research is expected to be warmly welcomed by the cybersecurity community. Quoting Protocol. According to a news release, the DOJ announced a new policy that, for the first time, directs the good faith security research should not be charged under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The act has long been controversial among cybersecurity professionals, particularly following the death of Reddit co-founder Aaron Swartz, who died by suicide in 2013 after facing severe legal issues for downloading documents from a server at MIT. The DOJ said the new policy aims to ensure that the agency only focuses on certain specific Computer Fraud and Abuse Act cases. The policy clarifies that hypothetical CFAA violations that have concerned some courts and commentators are not to be charged, the DOJ said in the release. The news release says the agency will focus on cases where, quote, a defendant is either not authorized at all to access a computer or was authorized to access one part of a computer, such as one email account, and despite knowing about that restriction, accessed a part of the computer to which his authorized access did not extend, such as other users' emails. However, the new policy acknowledges that claiming to be conducting security research is not a free pass for those acting in bad faith, the DOJ said in the release. Additionally, the DOJ will create a new Cyber Operations International Liaison position to work with U.S. prosecutors and European law enforcement officials to up the tempo of global operations against top-tier cyber actors, including arrests, extraditions, asset seizures, and working together to dismantle infrastructure. Why do we care? This is a pretty big deal for researchers. While not codified by law, and Congress should clear that up, this policy sends an unambiguous signal to researchers. You can do your work. The government doesn't view it as breaking the law. A quick market review. In a survey from the National Association for Business Economics, the median forecaster expects 2022 gross domestic product to rise by 1.8%, compared with a median projection of 2.9% in February. GDP growth was 5.5% in 2021. The risk of recession is forecasted as up. So the Silicon Valley investment firm Y Combinator set guidance to its founders last week, and TechCrunch got their hands on it. Here are some highlights. Quote, no one can predict how bad the economy will get, but things don't look good. The safe move is to plan for the worst. If the current situation is as bad as the last two economic downturns, the best way to prepare is to cut costs and extend your runway within the next 30 days. Your goal should be to get to default alive. It's your responsibility to ensure your company will survive if you cannot raise money for the next 24 months. Remember that many of your competitors will not plan well, maintain a high burn, and only figure out that they are screwed when they try to raise their next round. You can often pick up significant market share in an economic downturn just by staying alive. And the guidance on raising money isn't good either. Again, quoting, if you are post-Series A and pre-product market fit, don't expect another round to happen at all until you have obviously hit product market fit. If you are a pre-Series A, the Series A milestones we publish here might even turn out to be a bit too low. If your plan is to raise money in the next 6 to 12 months, you might be raising at the peak of the downturn. Remember that your chances of success are extremely low, even if your company is doing well. We recommend you change your plan. While warnings for small companies, the news isn't all bad. Protocol also reports that some VCs welcome the slowdown. With prices and investment coming down, the speed of deals also slows, and, quote, some VCs are relishing the chance to run a longer deal process compared to the breakneck pace of 2020 and 2021. That said, the startups themselves aren't as excited. The fire hose of money is over. Why do we care? Tactically, just because the guidance isn't for IT services companies doesn't mean it's not relevant. Investors are telling their startups how to behave, which seems like handy guidance to any business owner. They're happy to slow down the money cannons. They can be more deliberate, and we're back to basics, meaning more in the market. The other takeaway is how clear the guidance is. Choppy waters ahead. And when choppy waters are in place, those basics are more important. Focus there. And as Y Combinator says, focus on just making it. Barracuda Networks, in support of MSP Day, which they created 5 years ago, released their 2022 The Evolving Landscape of the MSP Business Report last week. Some highlights. According to survey respondents, MSPs expect revenues to grow by over a third in 2022, with average revenues predicted at $12.12 million this year, compared with $8.93 million in 2021. And while managed services are not the sole source for revenue for many respondents, service provision is on a growth trajectory. In 2021, 53% of respondents' income came from services, which is predicted to rise to 63% in 2022. On average, in 2021, respondents' service offerings increased by 4 services, but in 2022, 94% expect their services portfolio to increase by an average of 6 services. Employee burnout is a growing concern, with fears of cyber attacks on the rise. MSPs will have to focus more on employee well-being to stay successful. Nearly 1 in 5 at 16% respondents believed the average employee is highly stressed, while 56% said stress levels could be defined as moderate. Further, 80% of respondents felt their customers are increasingly concerned about being breached by cybercriminals and are looking for them to help, creating more pressure on the MSP to deliver. Concerns over regulation and compliance are increasing. Adding to that strain are evolving cybersecurity regulations. Just 36% of MSP respondents were confident of being fully up to date and compliant with these regulations. Another 36% believe that there are too many cybersecurity regulations to comply with. It's no surprise that 89% felt their organizations needed further support and education around these regulations. Ultimately, failure to address these issues could lead to both workforce performance and customer service problems further down the line. Why do we care? First, I'm ignoring their obvious data about vendor alignment, as I thought there was nothing to learn there. Now my take. As discussed yesterday, investors and economists are much more pessimistic, so I wouldn't take this optimism so easily. I would instead focus on the 2 main concerns: employee burnout on security and regulations and compliance. Interestingly, I think the 2 are pretty linked. The increasing workload over attacks and compliance and regulation all leads to burnout, unless the approach to one will help with the other. 3 product releases I wanted to note. First, Microsoft announced an update to Windows 11 focused on the Windows subsystem for Android, which is now testing Android 12.1. Bunch of enhancements, still only available to test for Windows insiders. Second, also from Microsoft, Visio is becoming an online service. This one is new to me, but Microsoft is including Visio in Microsoft 365 plans, including cross-platform support, bringing Visio to the Mac for the first time. Finally, WhatsApp launched its Cloud API to all businesses. It's a cloud-based version of the WhatsApp Business API. This version is focused on small businesses and designed to integrate quickly, only minutes instead of weeks. Oh, and it's free. Why do we care? There's tactical value here. I wanted to highlight how walls between silos are breaking down as we move towards more ubiquitous computing. Android versus Windows, well, who cares if they work together? The operating system becomes irrelevant if Visio is available anywhere, and APIs bring it all together. I did want to note how WhatsApp Move is more about communications, enabling business chat more openly. This fits into e-commerce plays in my mind and ensures a consistent customer experience everywhere. It's worth considering for your customers. And this story from Forbes. According to a recent report, 61% of firms are selling more on digital marketplaces as compared to this time last year. The bigger the firm, the higher the likelihood they used more marketplaces last year than in 2020. Newer firms also said they used more marketplaces last year as compared to 2020. Among firms with annual revenue in 2021 of more than $100 million, 68% said they were using more marketplaces, while the same was noted by 63% of firms between $5 million and $100 million, and 52% of firms with annual revenue of less than $5 million. Why do we care? Adoption is slower in smaller organizations, which could be viewed as an opportunity. Two dimensions right now are more likely to use marketplaces, newer and larger. So that means smaller and older do remain more open space. As we continue to track marketplaces, remember this data point. Did you know Cisco helps managed services providers directly? Know about the Cisco Partner Program? Focused on helping partners combine managed services expertise and service creation with innovative Cisco technology and proven go-to-market resources. There's a program option for you. With provider pricing, MDF, and marketing resources, coupled with Cisco's leading technologies including Meraki, Duo, and Umbrella, learn more with the link right in the show notes. A new report from Alinea Partners, a secret shopping organization for technology companies. Their secret shopper report researched the B2B sales process using secret shopping as a methodology, covering nearly 700 companies in 6 regions and across 7 different product categories. I picked one key area of focus from the report. 2 out of 3 buyers abandoned their buyer's journeys in frustration before hitting the CRM system. In over 2/3, at 68% of cases, the buyer was given cause to abandon their buying journeys. Why? Frustration, failing to show up in search results, or a lack of understanding of the buyer's business context were 2 reasons for the drop-off. 47% still have no search function on their website to help prospects find information on solutions or products they may wish to buy. 41% of websites use language about features, not the business value they can provide based on their expertise and not just their product portfolios. Only 1/3 at 33% sell on business values the potential customer can gain if they select the proposed solution. And here's a frightening one. Over half at 55% of salespeople took the initiative and led the sales process. While this indicates a natural inclination to take the lead, 63% of buyers wishing to engage in sales failed to connect at the first attempt. Why do we care? I've done a bit of work with the team here before, and the secret shopper B2B concept is one I think is incredibly clever. I can't say I'm surprised by this data. As part of researching the diversity report every quarter, I visit many vendor and services companies' websites, and so many of them are so very, very bad. Both the lack of search and the lack of focused information to assist a buyer in becoming informed is staggering, much less the ability to buy anything or make the next step on the journey happen. Filling out a contact us form does not count. If the action doesn't directly take me on the step, rather than passively wait on some missive to appear into the ether, then it's a broken journey. I've dug into this topic before. Can someone buy on your site, or book their meeting, or take the first step? Or even as this report points out, learn about the business value provided beyond saying you provide business value. A report that Democrats on the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee issued on Tuesday asserts that ransomware attacks are surging even as federal efforts to respond to them are not up to the task. This is pulled from Cyberscoop, citing that the report concludes that the government is struggling to keep up with the problem in part because data reporting and collection on ransomware attacks and payments is fragmented and incomplete. The Washington Post covers comments by Representative Alyssa Slotkin, citing a need for broader options to push back on nations that violate the norms online, which could include blocking nations from the international financial system or dramatically restricting trade with them. During the same discussion, Representative Michael McCall urged more robust work with U.S. allies to establish rules of the road in cyberspace and the consequences for nations that violate them. The Post also covers the deployment of new monitoring tools at CISA to give broad visibility to hacking threats across the civilian government and newly expanded authority to force agencies to fix digital vulnerabilities before hackers exploit them. Legislation is gaining traction too. Politico noted both the Better Cybercrime Metrics Act and the National Cybersecurity Preparedness Consortium Act earlier this month, and the House passed around half a dozen cyber-related bills in the last 2 weeks, including measures to provide cyber funding to state and local governments and to strengthen the federal cyber workforce. The pace is deliberate and intentional. There are more on the way, as the House reviews ones passed by the Senate and the bipartisan Intragovernmental Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, which would require the DHS to enter into cyber information sharing agreements with the House and Senate. Now, why do we care? You can't manage what you don't measure, right? Well, the US government is starting to measure. This much activity is going to end up with results. On Monday, I noted how many providers think the current level of regulation is too much, and we have a wave more coming. It's a rather fundamental shift going on here. Regulation is coming was the mantra, but rather than a light at the end of the tunnel, now we can make out the details on the front of the train. I'm confident there is money to be made here. I worry about those providers who aren't geared or gearing up with a process to monitor and manage the legal landscape. How's that complaining about too much regulation working out for you? More on the security landscape. NexusGuard released the DDoS statistical report for 2021. While 2021 had fewer attacks than 2020, the numbers are still greater than pre-COVID-19. HelpNetSecurity.com reports that 79% of respondents have activated a disaster recovery response within the past 12 months. 61% of these incidents were triggered by ransomware or other malware, with 60% of organizations reporting that they had experienced unrecoverable data during the same time, substantially more than the 43% response rate at the same question a year ago. And CrowdStrike is too in the game. CrowdStrike's 2022 Global Threat Report indicates that ransomware remains big business globally, with an 82% increase in ransomware-related data leaks in 2021. Gartner released their Peer Insights for Q1. Only 32% report that they did not experience a cybersecurity breach in Q1. Over half, at 51%, of respondents report that cybersecurity incidents rose in Q1 from Q4 of 2021. 44% said their cybersecurity budget is not adequate to deliver on goals, and another 22% consider it stretched. So, in the context of that landscape, two larger pieces that we can talk about. First is a new paper from the Institute for Security and Technology's Ransomware Task Force. Longtime listeners will remember them from a year ago, explicitly calling out MSPs as not commonly providing extensive security coverage or ransomware mitigations. They did an update to their 48 specific recommendations from last year. 12 have seen tangible progress in the year since. Some initial steps have been taken on 29 recommendations, while 7 recommendations have seen no action. The second is a piece by ProPublica, titled Why It's Hard to Sanction Ransomware Groups. The task is far more complex than one might think. With changing names, groups, alliances, and teams, the cybercriminals themselves are difficult to specify and attribute the crimes to. An example from the record, the Conti Group is shut down, but their talent is still at play. Why do we care? Broadly, the numbers aren't good. I was asked about my perspective on the IT services market recently by a colleague. After discussing larger trends for a while, I noted that the cybersecurity tax would be levied against businesses for a while. ProPublica's dive is recommended reading. Knowing why of cybercrime helps explain it to customers and justify the security tax. I'll be further digging into the Ransomware Task Force findings, but I wanted to note that this attention to providers will be ongoing. Don't expect that to be a one-and-done analysis. This group is proving to be a watchdog, reporting back to lawmakers, whom we discussed yesterday. I feel like a follow-up is really necessary on this one. I've covered Apple's self-service repair program on the show. Well, a reporter at The Verge ordered a kit. 2 Pelican cases containing 79 pounds of tools arrived to repair an iPhone mini screen. Here's a quote. Apple lets you rent an industrial-grade heat station that looks like a piece of lab equipment, right down to the big red safety dial you twist to release the emergency off button and the suction cup-tipped mechanical lifting arm. I slip my phone in a perfectly sized heating pocket that clamps a ring of copper around the iPhone's band to evenly distribute the heat and melt the seal around the screen. And I realize in horror that I've invited the Hot Pockets jingle to live in my head rent-free. Then spin a dial to raise the arm that separates the iPhone screen from its body. Or that's how it's supposed to work anyhow. The heating machine threw an error code partway through my first attempt, and Apple's manual didn't explain what to do if that happens after you've stuck your phone inside. So I wound up heating it twice in a row. And yet, that still wasn't quite enough for my screen to immediately pop up when the suction cup arm began to lift the glass. The manual did cover that situation, making me spin a second hidden knob to put more pressure on the suction cup, but I started freaking out when I saw what looked like crack spider across the screen. It turned out it was just suction cup residue. All of this after a credit card hold of $1,200 for the toolkit, which is lost if the tools aren't returned within 7 days of delivery. Now, why do we care? You know the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law comparison? Here, Apple is certainly delivering what they promised. You certainly can do the repair. But this is clearly not the spirit of letting individuals do the work. However, what the article does not cover is what I have. That this does open the door for third-party dealers to do it and use the tools and techniques Apple uses. In particular, publishing the manuals and the service details and having an approved process for third-party parts does open up the ecosystem for repairs. I think that's a key element to this. Right to repair doesn't mean that only individual consumers or the company can do the repair, but there are options for the owner to pick how to do the repair. However, the danger is that Apple may use this to justify lack of interest. If consumers find this process hard, they don't do it, which Apple then uses as justification to be more closed. It's a real danger of this approach. Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.